Hi, Tim from Horror Obsessive. Just have a saw the film, liked it. Have just like four quick questions. Um, so Justin, so I when I was watching it, I picked up on there are a few things that came to mind for me. Like I thought of like Black Mirror. I thought of there's an old film with Jodie Foster I saw years ago called Panic Room. So
Mhm.
what were some of your inspirations? What came to mind as you were making it?
Two films. One was The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Just his Jack Nicholson's descent into madness there was
Mm-hmm.
something we drew heavily on, and then The Invisible Man, which was there's this presence that you can't see that's kind of manipulating you, right? So that that was also a big influence. But Black Mirror, yes, exactly. It could have been a part of that series.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could kind of have like two or three kind of really relevant themes that you're juggling. You've got this over reliance on technology, you've got, female trauma, and you've kind of got dismissal of that trauma. So it's a lot to keep up in the air, but I think you guys did a really good job of delivering on it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Tim.
you're welcome. So this is another question. So this is for Natasha. So a lot of a lot of the film, a lot of what we see is just, your character more or less alone. So really the whole film kind of hinges on your performance. I felt like you really rose to the occasion. What was that like? And what do you feel like you brought to the table?
Well, thank you, Tim, for an awesome review.
Yeah.
And what I brought to the table, character-wise, for Eva,
Mm.
it was a process of creating a very creative process of bringing Eva to life, and um, I think it was just putting myself in her shoes and doing things the way that I felt that she would do them. So when it comes to the way she interacts with her husband, the way she just speaks to herself when nobody's around, and it was an organic integration between me and her, and also having a lot of empathy for her situation and everything that she went through, the trauma that she lived in Mexico City, and how suddenly it's all being brought back to life in a whole new city in a different country. This is something that she thought, she was going to be able to move past, and she couldn't escape her past.
Yeah. And she really her heritage kind of becomes this sort of source of comfort and empowerment later on in the film, which I thought that was really cool.
I think that her spirituality and the aspect of religion was a very, very beautiful integration into this film, and it just made it so much more real. And I consider myself a spiritual person, so definitely in times of despair, I I turn to a higher power. So for Eva, who's going through everything that she's going through, and also herself being a spiritual person, bringing back, you know, she has her culture in Mexico City, and she's bringing that to Los Angeles, and this is where she's starting over. So that's part of her, which is a huge part of her, which I think that maybe wasn't too obvious, that her spirituality is a huge part of who she is. But for me personally, I think that that was a very important aspect of character development in creating her. That faith that she has, and her Catholic roots from Mexico.
Mhm. Definitely. Um, so Justin, I know that this is your first time directing a film, if I'm not mistaken. You'd written a couple before, so how different was the experience of writing and directing versus simply writing? You know, how much of a leap was that, do you feel like?
Well, this was very specific, right? So we were writing with an efficiency of what we could shoot. Whereas I think in general, if you're just writing, you may not put artificial constraints on what you're trying to do, right? Like if you want your, if you want to write a massive action sequence, you should write it, right? Like you shouldn't be like, well, it has to be two guys on bikes because we can't get motorcycles, right? You know what I mean? But on this, it had to be bikes, right? It couldn't be motorcycles because we knew exactly what we were we were up against. So I think that is one main difference. But but in a way, those constraints made the writing process maybe a little bit simpler because we knew we had to keep it contained for 80% of the film in one location with very few characters, if not just one character, right? So we built the script around that, and it kind of helped. Like that framework did help. And I think there were some things that we were struggling with, like how does a character by themselves talk without it just seeming like just glaring exposition, right? And so we were working around some of those as well.
Yeah, that's important because sometimes you'll be watching a film and it'll be great, but you'll just be thinking to yourself, man, people do not talk like this in real life. This is just words from writers.
Yeah, exactly. But I think some of the success that we found was having her switch between Spanish and English, because it was just like her brain is switching in this environment where she's just like, what the hell is going on, right? Where she would be like on hold and getting annoyed and then saying like these assholes are never going to answer the phone, but
When
in
I get
Spanish,
annoyed,
right?
I get annoyed in Spanish. Sorry for interrupting, but it's true.
Oh no, I one of my best friends is a Latina woman, and she very much gets angry in Spanish. So I know about that a little bit.
For dramatic emphasis, of course. And I mean, it sounds so much better when you curse in Spanish.
Yeah. All right. And then one final question. This is more, I guess, for me. So as we go on, we see, like I said, a lot of it's just you in the house, but you're talking with, like, Eva's talking with her therapist and her husband, but we're seeing them through these video calls, and I noticed that we're usually seeing them on one of Diablo's like cameras or screens, and we know her phone's synced up to it. So I personally thought there was a little bit of ambiguity there. I'm like, is she actually talking to her husband? Is she actually talking to her therapist? Is this just the system screwing with her again? Because it could make life like holograms. It certainly could fake a video call. So is that some subtext that was intentional, or is that just me gaslighting myself, more or less? I'm just curious.
Okay,
All
so
right.
my question back to your question was, what was the therapist's line or what they said that made you feel like,
Oh God, I'm not going to be able to remember it now that you're asking me. It was she was Eva was it was something along the lines of like, I can't get through, I don't know how to get through to something, and then what the therapist replied to her on that. It was at the very end of the second call. Let me see if I can pull that up.
I think what we're trying to do with the therapist is have a continual voice of reason that brought Eva back from the brink, right? Each time. Okay.
Okay.
And then, we're using that third camera angle, which is our security camera angle, to show that she's also being watched, right?
Ah.
Okay. So you have this third person in the room constantly, this invisible man presence, and it's kind of listening to everything that it's saying. Don't drink too much coffee, don't drink too much alcohol, get exercise, and through the paranoia, ensuring that she does drink more coffee and she does drink a lot of alcohol, right? But I think in some of the calls, we also wanted it to feel, you know, a little ambiguous. Is this your friend, right? And then so in the last call, we have her face actually switch with a glitch into Diablo, right? Into El Diablo, to just kind of show that not all is what it's supposed to be.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the ambiguity in the film is definitely intentional, right? Because we're sort of in Ava's mind here, and it's what percentage of information are we being given that's true, right? Just like the neighbor network, just like if you were on YouTube, right? It's sort of that same idea of like the rabbit hole, right? And so she's processing all this information. And I think ultimately Ava doesn't want to be crazy. And ultimately she's not crazy, right? All of the stuff that she thinks is happening to her is real. But when you're telling people that, you sound completely psychotic, right? And I think that, you know, there's been a question that I've gotten, why doesn't she just leave the house? And I think the thing is because her own, you know, she's such a strong person, so she stays there because she believes that it's like it can't hurt her because it's this made up thing, right? It's this fake thing, so she's going to ride it out. Doesn't work out for her the best in the end, but you know, she did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially if you have like she has that history of, you know, trauma, and you say all these things are happening and everything, is people just tell you, oh, it's just flashbacks, it's just, you know, just your mind playing tricks on you, and it's not, unfortunately for her.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for putting up with all the technical difficulties. Pleasure talking to you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. We are good to go.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.